Hey everybody, Dr. O here, and let's do a review over Unit 11. Even though we're going to go over the questions here, you will have access to this PowerPoint presentation so you can review it on your own. The advantage here is that I might offer some explanation that you would find beneficial. So let's go ahead and get started. So this occurs as an action potential travels along a nerve and is received in the brain. Is it sensation? Is it conduction? Is it perception or stimulation? And hopefully you said it was conduction. So the act of that action potential traveling, that's conduction. Which of the following is not associated with receptor cells? Afferent, descending signals, sensory neurons, ascending signals. And hopefully you said the descending signals. So a stimulus activates a sensory receptor, a sensory nerve. It travels along afferent pathways, and that information is traveling up to the brain, which would be via ascending signals. And then once the brain decides what to do, it sends out a message to tell the body to do something via the descending signals. You've hit your thumb with a hammer. Which receptor is activated? A nociceptor, thermoreceptor, mechanoreceptor, or a chemoreceptor? Well, I guess it depends on how hard you hit your thumb, but typically it's going to trigger a nociceptor, which is a pain receptor. It's early spring and you've decided to go swimming. You jump into the pool and the water is colder than you anticipated, but you remain in the pool because you know that eventually you're going to get used to it. What sensory phenomena are you relying on? Is it perception, adaptation, sensation, or conduction? And hopefully you said adaptation. That's the ability of nervous input, nervous system stimuli to basically start to ignore the stimulus and allow you to go on and do what you do. So certainly you jump into a cold pool, you will get used to it. That's adaptation. Just like if you're in a room with something foul smelling, eventually you will get used to that. Which is also adaptation. So the body's ability to basically ignore a sensory stimulus is adaptation. What type of receptor cell is involved in the sensations of sound and balance? Is it a chemoreceptor, a mechanoreceptor, photoreceptor, or thermoreceptor? And hopefully you said mechanoreceptor. The specialized hair cells in the vestibular part of the inner ear, which is our balance part, as well as the cochlea, which is our hearing part, both of those are mechanoreceptors. There are special sensors in the body, specifically in the blood vessels, that measure blood pressure. The type of receptor that is involved is a chemoreceptor, an osmoreceptor, a baroreceptor, or a thermoreceptor. And hopefully you said a baroreceptor. Baroreceptors are special types of mechanoreceptors that can sense pressure changes. The function of cranial nerve relies on mechanoreception, baroreception, chemoreception, tactile reception. Cranial nerve 1. And cranial nerve 1 is olfaction, so hopefully you said chemoreception. It relies upon the presence of those odorant molecules to engage, so it's chemical in nature. Which of the following does not make up olfactory epithelium? Olfactory tract cells, olfactory receptor cells, basal cells, supporting cells. And hopefully you said the olfactory tract cells. That is the one structure that is found outside of olfactory epithelium, and that's what makes up the olfactory nerve that is going to connect up with the brain. This olfactory structure produces mucus. Is it the cribriform plate, supporting cell, basal cell, olfactory gland? And hopefully you said it was the olfactory gland. Why do we even need mucus? That's a good question. I bet we find it in this particular section in just a little bit. Which statement is not true of olfaction? Olfaction relies on the presence of odorants. Odorants must be dissolved in fluid to be detected. An odorant's binding to a chemoreceptor triggers an action potential. Olfaction is relayed in the thalamus. Which one of those is not true? And hopefully you said D. Olfaction is relayed through the thalamus. That is not true. Olfaction is the only sense that of the special senses that is not relayed through the thalamus. All the rest are. So a moment ago I asked, why is it that we have the mucus producing glands, the olfactory glands, and it's right here on this particular slide. B, odorants must be dissolved in fluid in order to be detected. Which taste sensation is sensitive to the pH of saliva? Is it sour, sweet, savory, or salty? And hopefully you said sour. Sour has to do with the presence and the concentration of hydrogen ions, which is basically going to affect pH. Which of the following cranial nerves carries taste sensation? Is it cranial nerves 5 and 7? Is it cranial nerves 7 and 9? Cranial nerves 5 and 9? Cranial nerves 3 and 7? Well, there are 3 cranial nerves that carry taste sensation, and 2 of them are cranial nerve 7 and cranial nerves 9. Cranial nerve 10, yes, the vagus nerve, also carries sensation from the throat. Which of the following is not true of gustation processing? The primary gustatory cortex is in the insula. Secondary sensory neurons synapse in the cerebellum. Gustation travels through the thalamus. Sensory neurons synapse with the nucleus solitarius. And hopefully you realize that there are no secondary sensory neurons that are going to have anything to do with the cerebellum. Cerebellum is largely to do with motion of the body, not to do with taste. The binding of a molecule to a sensory cell in a taste bud creates an action potential. This is an example of a tactile receptor, chemoreceptor, mechanoreceptor, proprioreceptor. Hopefully you said chemoreceptor. Yeah, taste is based upon chemoreception. Which of the following is not a source of the sensation of sweetness? So all of these can contribute to sweetness except for one. Is it sugars such as lactose and fructose? Is it amino acids, glutamic acid, or alcohols? Which one does not contribute to the sensation of sweetness? And hopefully you said glutamic acid. Glutamic acid is specifically that umami flavor that we like, that sort of savory flavor that we see presence in a lot of meat. The retina and the optic nerve are considered tunics of the inner eye, structural components of the eye, optical components of the eye, or neural components of the eye. Well, we know the optic nerve's neural, so why don't we go with neural components of the eye? That's right, they're both made up of nervous tissue, so they're considered neural components. Which statement about the structure of the eye is true? So all of these are false except one. The optic disc is the area of greatest visual acuity. The sclera is the innermost tunic of the eye. The lens divides the anterior and posterior chambers of the eye. The iris is the most anterior structure of the eye. And hopefully you said the lens divides the anterior and posterior chambers of the eye. So let's look at each one of these. So the optic disc, is it the area of greatest visual acuity? No, it's our blind spot. We have no vision there. What about the sclera? What layer of the eye is it? Well, it's the outermost layer. Who's the innermost? Hopefully you said the retina. And the iris, is it the most anterior structure of the eye? No, that would be the cornea. Which statement about the retina is true? So all of these are false except for one. There are 4 types of cone cells that detect color. Rods are found evenly dispersed throughout the retina. Rods and cones synapse with the optic nerve. The retina has an outer synaptic layer made of bipolar cells, as well as an inner synaptic layer made of the retinal ganglia. Well, hopefully you said D. The retina has an outer synaptic layer and an inner synaptic layer. The outer layer is where we're going to find the bipolar cells as well as the rods and cones. And the inner layer is where you're going to find all those other specialized cells, including the retinal ganglia. So what about each one of these? How many types of cone cells are there that detect color? There's only 3, not 4. And where do we find rods? We find rods mostly on the periphery of the macula. And rods and cones do not directly synapse with the optic nerve. It has to go through these series of different cells. So rods and cones will synapse with bipolar cells. Bipolar cells have an interconnection with horizontal cells and the amacrine cells. And then ultimately we get to the retinal ganglia and then finally to the optic nerves. Which statement about cones is false? They function in bright light. They are responsible for clear vision. They detect color. They are found largely on the periphery of the macula lutea. And hopefully you said that they are not found largely on the periphery of the macula lutea or lutea. So yeah, they do detect, they do function in bright light, they detect color, they're responsible for clear vision, but they are going to be the densest in the macula and even more densely in the fovea centralis of the macula. Which of the following cranial nerves is not associated with eye innervation? So all of these except one. Who is not the one? Is it cranial nerve 3, cranial nerve 4, cranial nerve 5, or cranial nerve 6? Well, it would be cranial nerve 5. Although it has an ophthalmic division, that ophthalmic division is just used to describe the region of the face that it provides innervation to. It has no innervation to the eye. You have your patient move their eyes to the left and to the right. What cranial nerves are you testing? Is it cranial nerves 4 and 6, cranial nerves 2 and 3, cranial nerves 3 and 4, cranial nerves 3 and 6? And hopefully you said cranial nerves 3 and 6. So let's think about this. Cranial nerve 6 innervates the lateral rectus muscle, which is what causes the eye to move laterally. But what causes the eye to move medially? Well, that would be the medial rectus muscle, and that is innervated by cranial nerve 3. The auditory cortex is located in the frontal lobe, temporal lobe, insula, or cerebellum? It would be the temporal lobe. The ossicles of the ear are found in the auditory canal, middle ear, eustachian tube, or the bony labyrinth. In the middle ear. The structures found within the bony labyrinth include all but which of the following? So all but one of these. Who is not in the bony labyrinth? Is it the cochlea? Is it the vestibules? Is it the semicircular canals? Is it the tympanic membrane? And hopefully you said tympanic membrane. Hair cells of the vestibular system can be found in the ampulla and semicircular canals, vestibular chamber and semicircular canals, vestibular chamber, the saccule, and the utricle, the ampulla, the saccule, and the utricle. And the answer is that the hair cells are found in those specialized structures known as the ampulla, the saccule, and the utricle. Pink eye is an infection of the what structure of the eye? Is it the conjunctiva, the lacrimal apparatus, the cornea, or the sclera? And it would be the conjunctiva. Conjunctiva. The vestibular nerve communicates with which of the following? The thalamus, the cerebellum, the nuclei of cranial nerves that control eye motion, or all of the above? It actually communicates with all of these. So like all of the other special senses, it gets routed through the thalamus. Because the cerebellum plays a role in body motion, it has a synapse there, and it also runs in the same tract and synapses with a nuclei that the cranial nerves that control eye motion do, which is why when you have vestibular issues, it can lead to aberrant eye motion, some darting of the eyes. Glaucoma. This is a disorder in which the sclera venous sinus becomes blocked, intraocular pressure increases, the retina and optic nerve are compressed, or all of the above? All of the above. Yeah, the scleral venous sinus becomes blocked. It causes the increase in interocular pressure, and that pressure compresses the retina and the optic nerve, and we end up with damage to the eye. Red-green color blindness results when red cones respond to green light and vice versa, which would be green cones responding to red light, or the optic nerve is damaged, or the visual cortex is damaged, or the pupillary reflex is absent. And the answer is that red cones respond to green light, or green cones respond to red light. The purpose of the gaze or H test is to test parasympathetic nervous system response of the eye, to test cranial nerve 3 pupillary reflex, to test motor function of cranial nerves 3, 4, and 6, to test eye motor responses and pupillary reflex. And the answer is to test the motor function of the cranial nerves that innervate the eye. Which statement about the Weber test is false? So all of these are true except for one. It differentiates between conductive and sensorineural hearing loss. Tuning fork sounds are louder in the ear with conductive hearing loss. It diagnoses bilateral and unilateral hearing losses. Tuning fork sounds are quieter in the ear with sensorineural hearing loss. So this question is asking you to really dial in your understanding of the Weber test. And the answer is C. So the Weber test can do all of these except for C. So it does help us distinguish between conductive hearing loss and sensory neural hearing loss. And tuning forks sounds are going to be different if you have a conductive loss versus a sensory or neural loss. And this is how they manifest. This condition results when the shape of the eye is too long. Is it presbycusis, farsightedness, nearsightedness, or astigmatism? Hopefully you said nearsightedness. And with that, my friends, we are done with the Unit 11 review. Good luck on your exam.